Kia ora koutou, ko Amy Markello, tuku ingoa, and welcome to tonight's Women and Emergencies Voluntary Organization Spotlight session with the New Zealand Red Cross. This is the third out of our 5 voluntary sessions, and we're going to focus on New Zealand Red Cross and some of their volunteer support teams. So wanted to say thank you all, both the speakers and the attendees, for coming tonight and spending a little bit of time learning about them. Just a note, in case you didn't catch it, we are going to be recording this session, so we'll send a link out tomorrow to the webinar. If you miss anything, you're welcome to do that or to distribute it a little wider. But we do have quite a bit to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and open us with a karakia and then move into things. So, te hui, whaia te mataranga kia marama, kia whai, take nā mahi katoa, tua mahi, tua kaha, aroha ato, aroha mai, tato kia tato katoa. For this gathering, seek knowledge and understanding, have purpose in all that you do, stand tall, stand strong, let us show respect for each other. So just a little bit of housekeeping and a little bit about what tonight's going to do. Very shortly, I'm going to pass it over to Jackie Bubb from the New Zealand Red Cross, who's going to tell you a little bit about the organization along with Fee. And then they're going to have 2 of their volunteers talk a little bit about themselves, their teams, their experiences. And then we're going to open up to Q&A. So you don't have to wait until the end of the session to that kind of open time. You're welcome to drop any questions you have in the chat. It can be for anyone in particular, for all of them, and any of us can just, jump in and try and answer your question, or we might wait until the end to get to your questions, but at least we'll see quite a number of them. So please do let us know how you feel about the session and the content when you get the survey the next day. It'll come along with the link telling you a little bit about it, but that's enough for me. So I think over to you, Jackie.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Amy, for that warm welcome. My name's Jackie and I'm the Director of Domestic Operations at New Zealand Red Cross. I've got a few of my colleagues here this evening. So I've got Fee Clarkson, who Amy mentioned is our Communications Manager. Got Sue Holden, who is a Nelson Disaster Welfare and Support Team member, and Crystal Boyd is a Whanganui Disaster Welfare and Support Team member. I'm going to allow the 3 of them to share a little bit about themselves personally, because so I won't go into full introductions on the 3 of them. But perhaps just to open up, I'll explain a little bit about how I came into emergency management. And as this is a conversation around volunteering, I just wanted to reflect on why I personally am so passionate about volunteering. So at the age of about 22, 23, I was traveling in South America. I was traveling with a good friend of mine, and we were basically working so that we would have enough money to get ourselves to the next country, and then we would stop somewhere and move on. We were at one stage in Peru, and slowly our funds were dwindling, and we were, heading towards running out of the money that we had saved. And while we were there, we just before we arrived, actually, there was a very large earthquake, Pesco earthquake in 2007. Where hundreds of people were unfortunately killed, and it devastated several towns. I offered to go and help for a few days. We found out we could join a volunteer crew there and support them, and my friend and I agreed just to go for a few days, and I ended up purchasing a tent and living in a compound because I loved it so much, and ended up staying for several months until finally the organisation closed down. I didn't actually want to go. I left when the organisation finally finished up. Actually joined the one that replaced it for a very short period of time. And it was my introduction into emergency management. I was well and truly hooked at that stage. I can honestly say I didn't even know what emergency management was before then. And I think what I learnt in that experience, I still apply to the way I work and to the journey I've been on to get into this role. Since then, I've had lots of both volunteer and professional positions, including working for Auckland Emergency Management. I was a volunteer again in the Pacific for a couple of years, working for VSA in Vanuatu, supporting the Emergency Management Office and some work that World Vision were doing. And I've also been here. So I'm going to hand over now to Fee, who's going to take us through the first part of our organisation. We really wanted to explain a little bit about the wider work we do, because we are a large organisation in New Zealand Red Cross, and I think it's important that you understand about our entire whānau. And while I talk about that, I know that although it's mainly going to be Crystal, Sue, Fee and I talking to you this evening, I just want to let you know that I'm aware that there's quite a few people in this virtual room that also have Red Cross connections. And I just wanted to invite you, regardless of what your connection is to Red Cross, to join us in the conversation, help us answer some of the questions if you think there's a question that you might be well placed to answer, and feel free to pop in the chat your connection or who you are, and it would be nice to involve you, so feel free. So over to you, Fee.
Kia ora koutou, ko Whiana Clarkson toka wingua. I have come to Red Cross recently, only actually in January of this year. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit what I learned so far, but just briefly, I've come from a background of a slightly different emergency management role. I am purely in communications, but I've been doing that for the last decade for the student population of North Dunedin as part of the University of Otago. So alongside flooding and fire events, we've also done emergency management for COVID, and along the way also for a bomb threat. So a slightly different background to others, but it's all about, in my job, all about communications. So no matter what the incident is. So we just wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about New Zealand Red Cross as part of the wider space of who we are. So we are part of the International Red Cross Red Crescent movement. It's the largest humanitarian movement in the world. We have about 13 million members in 191 countries, and we carry out a really wide range of inspiring work across the globe, including emergency management work. Initially in New Zealand, we started as a sort of an offshoot of British Red Cross, but we've been New Zealand Red Cross since 1915, and today we have about 10,000 members. Of about 8,000 of those are active volunteers, and among them are our disaster welfare support teams, who we affectionately call RISTEs. Amy, if you can pop to the next slide, thanks. Thank you so much. I can't tell if you've actually moved it. Have you moved the slide there, Amy? Sorry. Oh, I can't see it. It's good. Thank you. Due to the size of our volunteer base, as you can imagine, we collectively clock quite a lot of volunteer hours. So these are last year's figures, but over 100,000 volunteer hours across things like Meals on Wheels, volunteering in our op shops where we do sustainable work, help people, find affordable clothing, but also raise some money for our work. We support refugee settlement up and down the country, and refugee employment or former refugee employment, and emergency disaster welfare support. We also train thousands of people in first aid every year. Thank you. Next slide. So our disaster welfare teams have been around in a sort of more close to their current form since the 1950s and 60s. After we'd helped out at Kangawai and Wahine disasters. This picture here is from the 1970s. That pussy bow is definitely back in fashion, but I can assure you our uniform is a little bit more practical these days than it was back then. We also send people overseas as international delegates to disasters across the world. About 30 of our people over the course of 3 years were, for example, helping on the ground after the Indonesian earthquake and tsunami, which is 20 years ago this year. At the moment, we have someone in Papua New Guinea leading some of the recovery work there. And we also do resilience building work. So we regularly have people or teams in the Pacific helping our Pacific neighbours prepare for future weather events that may happen in that space. A lot of that work is IT related, making sure that people have communications in disasters. And I think there's a team over there at the moment. So if I can just pop to the next slide, what we do today, as compared to when we first started 100 years ago, or more than 100 years ago, we respond to disasters and emergencies. We're in disaster recovery. We also do a lot of preparation and resilience work. I talked briefly about refugee resettlement before, so we do, alongside helping people settle and finding roles, we also help with refugee trauma recovery. And helping asylum seekers. In the international space, we are connecting families who have been separated by conflict and disasters. So people who are separated can be contacting us and we'll help them find people around the world. And as I said, helping in the Pacific and sending international delegates. Next slide. Importantly, we are in the international humanitarian law space. So that's working with and raising awareness of the Geneva Conventions, which is at the heart of how Red Cross started a long time ago. We've just celebrated the 75th anniversary of the Geneva Conventions. We also do emergency appeals, both for disasters here and disasters overseas. Obviously we were deeply involved in the recovery from Auckland and the Cyclone Gabrielle severe weather events in 2023, where we raised almost $30 million, and that has all been spent or committed either in recovery or in resilience or helping people get back into their homes. And so then I'm going to turn over to Jackie, who's going to talk a little bit more about specifics in the emergency space.
Thanks, Fee. As you were talking, and I hate to point people out, but I think I recognise that we've got an international delegate in the room with us at the moment. So feel free to join the conversation if you've got any. If anyone asks a question about that, we will certainly be putting them your way, Natalie. Thanks, Fee. As you were talking, it made me think about what we're presenting here tonight is very much focused on our domestic capability, and some of the work that we have been doing recently with the National Emergency Management Agency is talking about our Red Cross, Red Crescent footprint internationally that we could perhaps rely on for some support in a very large event in this emergency in New Zealand. So we've had some really interesting conversations on that, and I just thought it was worth reflecting on that before I go into this next slide, because I know a lot of people's understanding of Red Cross and Red Crescent is actually from their experience internationally as well. So we are a support agency within the National CDM plan, and many of you will likely know that this plan has been recently reviewed, and a new edition of it is currently on hold. So the welfare subfunctions that you see there on your screen are those that we have nominally agreed to. They're a little bit different to the ones in the current 2015 plan, but they are very close. So I am putting the ones in there that we have rough agreement on at the moment that we're focusing on. So the first one is needs assessment, understanding the needs of people affected by emergencies. We often do this by undertaking outreach, visiting people in their homes, door knocking, or in civil defence centres, and we will undertake assessments usually on behalf of CDM. Psychosocial support is a lens that we put across everything we do. It is the provision of psychological and social interventions to people that have been impacted by emergencies, but it's also something that we practice in the way we work together. And so we really see the value in well-being, and so we make sure that in everything we do, we are putting that lens across the work. Financial assistance is the provision of and access to funding. You would have seen recently, following Cyclone Gabrielle, we went to appeal. So the public will often trust us to distribute funding to those people impacted and to make decisions around where that need is the greatest and how we can help. Inquiry led by New Zealand Police is around people that have been separated. Fee talked about restoring family links. That is a system we have internationally that allows people that have become separated to connect to their loved ones. So we support New Zealand Police with that international connection. Household goods and services is about provision to goods and services for people that have either been displaced or are sheltering in their homes. Again, in the recent Cyclone Gabrielle, we have provided what we call bundles, and it's all of those household supplies, everything from refrigerators, beds, heaters, kitchenware, everything anyone would need to be able to move back into their home. So we provided that to people that lost everything and didn't have the means to be able to replace it themselves. So that's still a project that we're still seeing people move back into their homes now following the repairs. And so every day we are still seeing more of those supplies go out. And shelter and accommodation, we are largely involved in the shelter component of this. This is in regard to the first days or at worst weeks when people are either in civil defence centres or sheltering. So not so much in that mid to long term accommodation. It's very much in civil defence centres or evacuation centres. Next slide, please, Amy. We largely deliver this through our network of disaster welfare and support team volunteers. So we have 20 locations across the country, and what we will often do is pre-position where we have small numbers of people or where we require extra support in some areas. We can provide surge support, sometimes pre-positioning people if we know something is certainly coming. We'll go to the next one. Our volunteers train every week. So in some cases, our volunteers train every week and every fortnight. They're trained in comprehensive first aid, psychological first aid, and undertake deployment training that covers all of those welfare functions that I spoke about. They have caches of equipment, which includes these trucks that you see on your screen, the air shelters and the trailers as well. So we've got 5 of these trucks across the country. They can cater for up to 70 to 140 people. So we can turn up at a civil defence centre with them and there is enough beds and bedding sets, tea and coffee supplies, first aid equipment, games for kids and porta cots to cater for people that are impacted. The trailers that you see also in the photo below, we have those in 17 locations at the moment, and they can cater to up to 50 people. We also have some water and sanitation equipment, and Fee touched on the IT ERU kits. So the information technology kits that we largely use internationally, but recently during Cyclone Gabrielle, especially in Tairāwhiti, we're actually able to use them domestically. So that is something we are looking at the moment, how we can improve our connectivity amongst ourselves, amongst our responders, but also to the communities that we serve. Let's go to the next one. I've talked about already what's in the stretchers, in the trailers. So that's just reiterating that. I think we can go to the next one, please. And on your screen now, fittingly before I hand over to Crystal and Sue, I just wanted to talk about our 7 fundamental principles because they certainly guide everything we do, and I know I adhere to them both personally and professionally. That's something that really resonates with me and something I often hear Red Cross people reflect on is the importance of these principles and the way they guide everything we do, including decision making and including the way we conduct ourselves when wearing the Red Cross emblem. So humanity, impartiality, neutrality, independence, voluntary service, unity and universality. And with that, I will hand over to our wonderful volunteers. Crystal.
Kia ora everyone. My name is Crystal Boys. I live in Wanganui. I'm a single mum of 3 children. My oldest son is 18 and I've got 2 girls who are 10 and 7. So I work full-time at the Wanganui Regional Health Network, and their focus is on primary care in the Wanganui region. And volunteer-wise, I'm on the disaster welfare support team, which we call DWIST, as the team leader, and I'm also on the Red Cross area council as a deputy chair. So I've always had an interest in volunteering. While my youngest 2 were little and I wasn't at work, there was a few different things that I volunteered for. Ended up being president of a play centre at one point, and then helping run a logistics team that did different community events. As part of being with Play Centre, they sent me along to a first aid course, which just happened to be run by Red Cross. And it was also at a time where my youngest 2 were a little bit older. I could leave them for more than just a couple of hours, and I was looking for something to kind of get me out of the family bubble, and that was just for me. And while I was sitting there doing the first aid course, there was this big poster on the wall with the Red Cross disaster welfare support team being advertised, and I kind of plucked up the courage to ask the instructor about it on the lunch break. And he was like, "Oh, well, we're training this week and you should definitely come along." And so I got the address from him and tried not to talk myself out of it, because I'm one of those people that always needs to take a buddy to new things. But I thought, no, if you don't go, you'll never know. So I showed up, and 6 years later, I'm still there. One of the other draw cards for me for the DWIS team was some of the first aid events that they do. And once I started at training, I very quickly realized that some of the other areas that we train in and help the community with got me really excited and just really started that passion of being in the emergency management space. For me, being able to make a difference to someone's experience in an emergency event, or even in a first aid event, not necessarily the person that's hurt, but their family, friends that are around them, is one of the most rewarding things for me. Having a bit of compassion or and understanding, and obviously using our principles can make a huge difference to someone's experience. So that's something I really like being able to help with. I really like a challenge of being able to come up with solutions on the spot for some things, which, as you probably all know, happens quite a lot in emergency management. There's always a lot of curveballs coming your way. I really enjoy being able to work alongside other agencies as well. I really like making the connections and how everyone just comes together as a group to help the community. Recently, I was in Wairoa, and we had a really good example of that. We had Māori wardens there, as well as Task Force Kiwi. And so I kind of just went up and introduced myself and formed some connections. And from there, we were sort of able to work together as a team to help the people that we were coming across in the community. So we were all there for different reasons. We were there for psychosocial support, or PFA, Task Force Kiwi were doing like all sorts of amazing jobs and helping people. And the Māori wardens were there helping with donations and food distribution and stuff. So there were some people that we were coming across that needed extra food, or there was one man who was trying to leave Wairoa, but his bus was stuck. So we were able to get the Māori wardens to drop food off, and Task Force Kiwi very kindly came with their utes and pulled the bus out so he could get on his way. And it was just a really nice opportunity to all come together and work together rather than just working around each other in an emergency situation. So at the start of 2022 was when I first became team leader for our DWIS team. I kind of got voluntold to put my name forward, which I did, and to my surprise was voted in as team leader, and they haven't let me leave or step down yet, but that's okay. And as you will all remember, 2020 wasn't probably the best year to step up into a team leader role. I literally hit the ground running. I think I had been team leader for 3 days before we got our first activation. My team helped Rural Fire with catering and making sure that they like their welfare needs are being met and they're looked after and hydrated and fed and all those fun things. So I think that was 3 days in, and then I had another 2 come in quick succession, and then Amy, who's here, called me and asked if I would be able to go to Whangaparoa to help with the Wuhan evacuees. So that was my first national deployment. Only a couple of months in as a team leader. So yes, definitely hit the ground running. I then obviously with the lockdowns, our team helped with the local CVAC in Wanganui on the hospital grounds. And it was actually a really good opportunity for me to use the skills that I had gained being in Whangaparoa and being sort of in that environment, with that, pandemic kind of scene. And so I was able to help the staff there to be able to set up and have, sort of different hot, cold zones, and with the logistics and how, managing the flow of traffic and all those kinds of fun things would work. And that's actually what led me to my current position. I was there for 8 weeks with Red Cross. I think I had left for 4 days, and then they rang and said, "Can you come back and we'll pay you this time?" And so that's kind of evolved to my role that I have today. In regards to my team, we train every week on a Wednesday night. Sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge trying to come up with new things every week and not be too repetitive. But our training is something that's really important. It grows us as a team, keeps our skills updated, and definitely builds confidence for when we're out in the field. As a team leader, for me personally, I like to gather the opinion of my team. Sometimes when I'm making my decisions, take the time to listen to those ideas, and I really like enabling them to step up. So sometimes when we show up to training, I will just appoint someone as team leader for the night, and that kind of gives them the chance to step up and lead, which also means if there was a national deployment and I wasn't there, then anyone on my team would be able to step into that role. Obviously, my time in the field is the most rewarding part of being DWIS. I get to put into action all my skills and training, and it's definitely a good reminder of why I'm with Red Cross and on a DWIS team, because it gives me a chance to interact with the other DWIS members and the other agencies, and of course helping those who need it. Personally, as you can imagine, with kids and being a single mother and work and volunteering, life definitely gets a bit hectic. I've had to find a balance of not only sort of work life, but work life and volunteering. I think I've got it nailed. Some days it doesn't feel like it, but I'm really lucky to have some good supports in place to help with the kids if I need to. I do have to be very organised, and if I kind of get a whiff of something that might be brewing, I'm very quickly on the phone to a few different people lining up things just in case. And the kids are really good. They know if I'm off to do Red Cross stuff, they just know that they'll be somewhere that will be looking after them and sort of taking over from me, and don't make too much fuss, and they they'll just see me when they see me. Sometimes we have lots of meetings and things, and I will be hiding in my car. Tonight I have bribed them to be quiet, and they're each in a room with electronics, which they're not normally on this time of night, but we do what we have to do, right? For Mother's Day recently, one of my daughters made me a card, and she'd drawn a picture of me in my Red Cross uniform, and it said, my mum is the best at Red Cross. And my teenage son always introduced me to his friends as this my mum who does Red Cross, which just really reassures me that they're okay with that. Their mum has to disappear sometimes, and they understand that I'm out there helping people. And yeah, so that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Christelle. That nearly makes my eyes tear up a little bit to hear about your kids. I'm not going to lie. That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing. So,
tēnā koutou katoa, ko Sue Holden Takawingoa. Thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit about my life as a Blisti. Really appreciate the opportunity. So I've volunteered pretty much all my life. My parents always volunteered, and so as kids we were voluntold. And then it just naturally went into, when you've got little kids, you do the kindy and the creche and the schools, all those things, Girl Guide leader, lots and lots of committees and groups. But Red Cross, or like disaster support, is something that for many, many years I wanted to do, but I knew that while my children were little, and that Crystal is absolutely a super mum, but I just felt that I couldn't do it. And so I waited until my children were adults and away from home, because I just knew if they were in Nelson and there was a disaster, that I would want to be with them, and I'd be so distracted. So for me, that was the right thing to wait. So I joined the team not long after there was Cyclone Gita kind of in the Motueka area. And I know my first night there, they were still cleaning up and cleaning their boots and things, and I could just see what may happen. That first year, lots of training, which was brilliant, but I often thought during that first year, oh, I wonder what all this training's for. And then the Nelson fires happened, and I was called out with barely half an hour notice. Can you be at the service centre in half an hour? And it was brilliant. Not for the people of Wakefield, of course. But as I started that deployment, everything that I'd learnt the previous year just clicked into place, and I thought, oh, that's why. And that was a really long deployment. It went on pretty much a month, because we were still, apart from the initial response, we were still going out in evenings and weekends and just doing some welfare checks on people. So as a first deployment, it was incredible, really. And really, yeah, I just working alongside DWIS teams from around the country, and we just, because we train in a similar way, we just slot in together. So you make new friends, you'll go somewhere else and you'll meet up with them again, and that's just brilliant. And being deployed on your home turf, I live in Nelson, sorry, I should have said that. Being on your home turf and being deployed is actually is quite difficult. I found that we'd do 12-hour days, but then I'd come home and I'd try and do a little bit of work. I'd try and catch up on the washing, you know, get the groceries in. And so you just kind of get exhausted, really, because you're trying to have a normal life as well as your deployment. And so when you get deployed away, it's actually easier, even though you're away from home and not necessarily in a comfy bed. So yeah, so my most significant deployment was actually last year after Cyclone Gabrielle. I went to the Hawke's Bay area, and that was, yeah, it's hard even to put into words, really, because it was just utter devastation everywhere I went, and sometimes I could barely walk because my boots were so caked in mud. And but really you totally put your own discomfort aside, because when you looked into the eyes of the locals, you just saw their pain and their grief, and you really just wanted to wrap them up. Utter devastation. And I can still picture some of those people that I talked to. I can still see them and remember their stories of, you know, a lady with 5 children, and she was on her own and she had to swim for her life, hanging on to as many children as she could, hoping the others would follow. And fortunately they all did, but she was just like an empty shell. She couldn't think, and I'll never get that out of my head, I think. And it was such a privilege just to be able to do a little something to come alongside her and to ensure that we kind of linked her with the right support services, made sure she could find somewhere to live, made sure that she could get some support from MSD, you know, and the public health, and everything. Was huge deployment. And I was going to say something else about that and I forgot, so never mind that. What I also was in Hawke's Bay was I was the psychosocial lead for the team, and at that, initially it was the Dunedin team, and so every night we did a debrief, but I also made the time to talk to each and every member of the team, just to chat and see where they were at. And a lot of the team, Dunedin team, had been volunteers for a long time, and they were pretty good at self-regulating and kind of letting things go. But there were some new team members, and so it was really good to be able to come alongside them and just support them. Some of them, I put them in touch with their team leaders and with our PSS coordinator, so that they could get a bit of extra support and things, because they were devastated as well by what they saw, and they were quite young. Dunedin has a high student population for their teams, of course. So the support, when I'm deployed, the support I get from my family and my work is incredible. As soon as the word comes out, sometimes my husband, he will be messaging me, "Are you going?" You know, because we know something's going on, and he always come in and he helps, and he makes sure that I've got everything. We've got a list, and he gets me out the door. And my work just released me. They say, just go. And so you know, they release me and they see me as their donation to Red Cross, is what they said. I work for a social service in Nelson, And yeah, so I don't have loss of income to worry about. I don't need to use annual leave. It's just like, you go and we'll see you when we see you, and be safe. And so great support. My family in Christchurch, they are constantly messaging, are you safe? Particularly my very elderly mother, you know, are you safe? Oh, I'm so worried. And you just have to, yeah, reassure your family as well. And Red Cross keep us safe. We have really great guidelines about what we do and don't do. You know, you're never on your own. There's always someone you can talk to, and so the support from further up the line is always amazing, and you feel incredibly supported. So it's just, yeah, it's really a privilege to work for an organisation that has those 7 principles, which are mine as well. It's how I live my life. So that was easy. I don't feel I had to kind of compromise any of my values. In an organisation that's such genuine care for people in times of disaster. And yeah, it's great. It's great. My team is fantastic. We just have a small team of currently we have 12 in our team, and we're a close-knit group, and really support each other in all that we do. And yeah, it's fantastic. Anyway, so that's all from me. So thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
So thank you so much for that. I just want to say, hearing you and Crystal speak makes me feel so humbled, and I feel so privileged to be in this position and have the opportunity to work alongside people like you. I think what you've just explained is amazing, and I reflect on your comments around all the support that it takes for a volunteer to get out the door, whether that be to training or whether that be to a response, everything that goes behind that, our families, our workplaces, our friends. It's certainly a huge network of people that makes it work the way it does. So we will stop there, but open the floor for anyone who has questions. Or comments. Feel free, if you're Red Cross and want to share your own experience, to jump in as well.
I've got one. Well, people might be finding the unmute button or finding their fingers on the keyboard. And this is for any of you guys, or I see a couple other quite familiar names online, so feel free to jump out. But I think what I'd really like to know is what sort of specific challenges you've encountered as a woman kind of in this field and as a volunteer.
Interesting question. Does anybody want to put forward an answer to that? I can give a while everyone else is thinking, I'll give an example. When it wasn't within Red Cross. I feel like New Zealand Red Cross really is incredibly supportive, and I just want to point out that there are over 50% within our disaster welfare and support team volunteers. We're actually got a higher number of female volunteers. But when I very first started out in emergency, my first job in emergency management, I took an administration role at Auckland Emergency Management because I so desperately wanted to get into the sector. I'd been actually coordinating volunteers before that on international build projects. So I remember when I went for the job, they were like, "Why do you want to come and work in administration?" And I was like, I really want to work for Auckland Emergency Management. And to be fair, I think they quickly learned that my administration skills aren't actually that great. But in one of the, as I progressed through various roles there. One of the meetings I went into, I was chairing an emergency management meeting with various stakeholders, and I turned up to this meeting and everybody else was in a uniform. There was New Zealand Police there was Defence Force, there was FENS, and everybody had a uniform on, and I was one of the only females in the room there. And I had taken along an administration assistant, just like myself when I'd started, who was taking the notes, and he was a man. And I remember being inside the room, and everyone turned to him and asked him, as we were just about to start, what the agenda was and what was happening today, assuming that he was the one leading the meeting. And I remember he turned around and he said, "Oh, I'm just with her. All I do is write the notes." And I remember being so thankful for his, I was so nervous at that meeting. I was terrified. And I remember just being incredibly thankful for his response. It meant a lot to me to just the way he said it just really helped. And I'll hand over to Natalie because I can see that she might have an answer.
No, I just took the subtle hints, ever so subtle hints from Jackie. So thank you. Yes. So for those that don't know me, I'm Natalie, and in New Zealand, I actually am a volunteer with the NZRT teams, but I'm also on the New Zealand Red Cross register to be one of those IT people that gets deployed sometimes to the Pacific, and also information management internationally for international emergencies. But yeah, I think during the pieces from Christelle and Sue, there was the really interesting things about the challenges that you already mentioned, and then Jackie's reflected, and those are all like the big picture ones. But from my point of view, I just wanted to mention the kind of little frictions of being a female, like the uniforms and the PPE and things. And I think it's a little friction, but it is one of those things that's a friction every time. And so whether it be the rugged PPE to protect you when you're out there, or whether it be like the uniform polo shirt that you wear as a delegate and you're going to these meetings with, governments in the Pacific Islands or whatever, and you want to show respect, and there's people who are dressed beautifully with their beautiful outfits, and there you are with a badly fitting lycra polo shirt. So whether it's PPE and it's a physical kind of issue in terms of not protecting as well as it could, or whether it's a kind of perception and look issue without any dangerous elements, I think that's just definitely a regular friction for me.
Such a good point, Natalie. And we are actually reviewing our uniform right now for that very reason. Well, for many reasons, but we know that is certainly one of the reasons we are discussing right now. So great for you to bring that up. Any other reflections on that?
When you find a really great female fit uniform, can you let us know? Because we've been looking for a couple of years and haven't found the answer. So
Definitely. Any other questions or people online? Or Sue or Crystal, anything you guys want to add after hearing each other share?
I've got a question. Oh, never mind.
Great minds, eh? We both speak at the same time. I just wanted to say I'm Liz from NEMA, I'm the NZRT Secretariat, so I know some of you, but it was great to hear from Crystal and Sue tonight. Thanks so much. I really liked how Crystal said in Wairoa the benefit of working with the other agencies instead of working around each other. So I really just want to put it out there that the more that we can facilitate joint training and exercising prior to deployments, the stronger relationships we'll have when the deployments do happen, and we won't work around each other. We'll go, hey, good to see you again. So just putting it out there that there's NZRTs around the country that do some similar training to you. So whenever there's trainings or exercises around civil defence centres or going out door knocking and stuff, if we can link some teams up together and do stuff together, that would be awesome. And thanks for your time tonight. It was really great to hear from you.
Hey, Crystal, thanks. It's Crystal. Liz, thanks so much for saying that. I was just for everybody else's knowledge, Liz and I have lots of conversations, and Liz has been a huge support behind some work we're doing and building our own competency framework, similar to what the NZRTs have already done. So Liz and I have had lots of conversations around that and really appreciate that support, advice and guidance that we can work together and achieve so much more by sharing across all of our agencies and all the agencies we represent. Completely agree.
So, Jen, did you want to ask that question? We probably have time for one or two more.
Cool. I've been pondering how to ask this question, and being in civil defense and also knowing the challenges of volunteering, the challenges of response teams, and the challenges of effective collaboration. I'm trying to figure out how to ask a question about what are things that CDM or civil defense could potentially do to better integrate in response, or better prepare for response and be ready for those responses. And I've obviously got a few ideas in my head, but you guys as volunteers on the ground may have some better ideas.
Anyone want to have a go at that, or should I talk while
I can mention, sorry, I was just trying to figure out how to unmute. It's not so much as on the ground, but we are really, really fortunate here in Wanganui to have a really close relationship with CDEM already. And it means that anytime they're doing any type of training or exercise that slots in with what we do, we're there working alongside them and training with them, which means when we do actually have activations, it's a very smooth process and we just all slot in together and we already know each other, and it is actually really beneficial as well. And we have actually done a couple of things with the Palmerston North NZRT, but definitely keen to do a lot more. Yeah, our team's always up for training with other agencies, but yeah, it definitely helps. And I go to all of the quarterly emergency management meetings too, which is also really helpful. So there's a lot of other agencies that know me now, and so quite often I'll have people send a message or something saying, hey, we're trying to do this, is this something that you can help with, or we're having this kind of training, do you think you could come along? And it just really makes, when you are activated and working together, just that much easier, because you can just jump straight in then without having to worry about all the introductions and things.
Great answer, Crystal. I think I can definitely see the evidence of the relationships that you have in your area. It's amazing the difference that those good relationships make. I really like Liz's comment. I don't know if anybody's seen that in the chat, but Liz says in the chat, my ideal would be for central government to enable financial reimbursement for loss of income for volunteers in CDM emergencies. I definitely would say funding is something that is, or to be honest, is always top of mind every time we respond. We don't get any government funding, New Zealand Red Cross, for the emergency management work we do. We do get government funding for the work we do internationally and with former refugees, but the emergency management space, we are completely reliant on our donors and the revenue that we can gather. And so that does mean every time an emergency happens and we are coordinating or providing, especially the surge support across the country, I'm watching our budget and watching the bottom line and looking at how we can make sure we manage what we do with the resources and the funding that we have. So thank you, Liz, for that comment. That's certainly something that is top of mind for us as well. I've spoken to volunteers at time during emergencies when they have lost income because of the response work that they've done with us. So it's a good point, and it's tough, right? Like that is, yeah, I can see Crystal nodding as well. It's really tough, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
I was just, oh, sorry. I was just going to say that I've got to be very careful with my annual leave, and I always have to save a portion for it so that if something happens, I can activate, because that's how I still pay all my bills and mortgage and all those fun things.
And it raised some really interesting questions over the pandemic for us as well, because of people's involvement or working with us and then leaving and going back to their roles, and their workplace's level of comfort about them going into offices where that raised some incredibly challenging situations, I would say, for us too. We've got some amazing employers of some of our volunteers that give them time off, like Sue explained, but that's not something that's awarded to everybody.
Just to give a little bit of hope to everyone, there is a cross-agency steering group on volunteering across central government agencies that meets once a quarter, and it is top of the priority list for these central government agencies to look at ways to financially support volunteers that have loss of income issues. So it's on their radar. I can't say when the solution will happen, but it's definitely on the top of the list.
Thanks, Liz.
I've just had a look at the clock, and I'm probably going to stop us on the Q&A now, but what I will say is on the last page, there is the email address. So if you have any other fiery burning questions, or you want to continue the conversation about volunteer reimbursement, feel free to flick them through either to Jackie and Fee or to the email address. But just a quick plug, I did start off for some of you who weren't here in the beginning by saying that this was the 3rd out of 5 sessions, so happy middle child session. But we have 2 more, so in a fortnight Fens will be talking, and then the fortnight after that, finishing us up, will be land search and rescue. So you can either go to the Humanitix site that you registered for this one on, or you can scan that little QR code. And then I'm just gonna close us off with a quick karakia. Mi mahi tahi tatou mo te oranga o te katoa. Humie huie ta'akie. We must work together for the well-being of all. Join all together, bind all together. Let it be done. So again, just a huge shout out to those of you who've joined us tonight, both in the audience and as speakers. I know there's quite a lot of the Red Cross whānau here tonight. It's pretty inspiring to see, to hear all of the conversation. Just really, really appreciate those contributions and learning a little bit more about everything that makes it tick.
Thanks for the opportunity, guys. It's amazing.
Good to see you guys.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. All the best.
Cheers.